In the previous panel, we looked at the three segments to the Birchat Torah. The first, an obligation, and the bracha for that obligation. Two versions. Nusach Ari Sfard is V'tzivanu al Divrei Torah, while Nusach Ashkenaz, the version is V'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. This is followed by a request that the study of Torah should be v'ha'arevna, pleasant and sweet for us, and to ensure continuity into future generations, that our children and grandchildren should have the same pleasant experience with their involvement to Limud Torah. Birchat Torah rounds off with a final bracha, an affirmation that Bachabanu Mikol Ha'amim, etc. It is the sequence of these brachot that appears to be somewhat problematic. 2 points are made in this bracha of Asher Bachabanu, both encompassing two areas of Jewish theology. The first, Asher Bachabanu Mikol Ha'amim, the fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has chosen, selected Bnei Israel from amongst the many nations of the world, and the consequence of that chosenness was that V'natan lanu et Torato, the concept of revelation, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu revealed to his chosen nation a set of guidelines for which they were to be responsible to observe. Which brings us to the obvious question regarding the Birchat Torah, and that is one of sequence. Clearly the obligation for the study of Torah is drawn from the acceptance that there was a revelation from HaKadosh Baruch Hu regarding this Torah. And as such, an argument could be made that the Asher Bachabanu Mikol Ha'amim bracha should precede the V'tzivanu al Divrei Torah bracha, because, as noted, the impetus for Torah study comes from the fact that God revealed that Torah to his nation. Without revelation, we would have a man-made document subject to the times of its creation, the mindset of the author, the audience for which this document was written, which is, by the way, the position adopted by the non-halachic forms of Judaism. Rabbi Yosef Karo, author of the Shulchan Aruch, suggests that the Asher Bachabanu Mikol Ha'amim V'natan lanu et Torato refers to the Torah Shebiktav, the Tanakh, while the obligation to study the broader definition of Torah, namely by far the greater proportion of Torah, the Torah Sheba'al Peh, is reflected in the bracha of V'tzivanu al Divrei Torah. So that the two components of Torah Shebiktav and Torah Sheba'al Peh is reflected in the berachot singular HaTorah. This distinction, however, does not remove the difficulty, namely that the bracha of V'natan lanu et Torato, even if it does reflect the Torah Shebiktav, should have been placed first, and only then we would have the bracha of V'tzivanu al Divrei Torah, the obligation to study the Torah Sheba'al Peh. A number of explanations can be given for the sequence of the two brachot, along the lines that the sequence highlights certain aspects of the Torah Sheba'al Peh over the Torah Shebiktav, upon which it is based. Halachic Judaism of today is built around the Shulchan Aruch, which in turn is based upon the Mishnah and the Gemara, the recorded viewpoints of the Tanaim and the Amoraim, which is the Torah Sheba'al Peh in a written format. So that while the Torah Shebiktav is the foundation of Halachic Judaism, the expansion of the mitzvot recorded in the Torah Shebiktav is built around the understanding that the Tanaim and the Amoraim had of this Torah Shebiktav. Worded differently, we cannot really study and understand the Torah Shebiktav without the Torah Sheba'al Peh. To highlight the importance of the relationship between the Torah Sheba'al Peh with the Torah Shebiktav, the authors of the Birchat HaTorah placed the bracha for the Torah Sheba'al Peh before the bracha of the Torah Shebiktav. Another approach, offered by Rabbi Eli Monk in the World of Prayer, suggests that the authors of this bracha, who were themselves Amoraim, felt the need to strengthen the authority of the Torah Sheba'al Peh against the challenges to halachic Judaism of the day from the minim, from the Jewish Christians and others who attempted to chip away from what in that day was from Orthodox Judaism. The placement of the bracha for the Torah Sheba'al Peh ahead of the bracha for the Torah Shebiktav sends a clear body language message that alongside the Torah Shebiktav there is an equally authoritative oral component eventually recorded and known as the Torah Sheba'al Peh. One final point, harking back to the title of these brachot, that they are the berachot HaTorah singular. Both the Torah Shebiktav and the Torah Sheba'al Peh comprise one single entity of Torah.